Hey there, ballers. Welcome to our Friday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grata. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in, kicking off your weekend, ending your week with us to hear our thoughts on baseball happenings around the league. Today is Friday, July 25th. We got a little bit to talk about. We're going to recap what went down over the first half of this week, over the three-game sets that were completed between Monday and Wednesday. Texas Rangers are rolling. They're two-stepping. Cleveland Rocks, they have won 7 of their last 10 and catapulted themselves back into the wild card race as well. Trade deadline, the hot stove, it's heating up, it's boiling, as there have been a couple of moves made before in advance of the trade deadline, as Josh Naylor is headed to the Seattle Mariners, and Ryan McMahon is heading to the Bronx to play third base for the New York Yankees. We talk about both of those trades and potentially some other rumors that are heating up as we roll along on today's show. Then we got a few things for you to tune into in terms of some series and players to watch to kick off your baseball packed weekend. Let's get right to it. Plenty of baseball. It's hot in the streets, and we can't wait to talk all about it. Let's play ball. All right, ballers. Thank you again for tuning in to our Friday show. We've got plenty to unpack, talk about what went down around the league. We're not going to go a full trip around the league this time. We're just going to recap on some highlights so that we can get back into the full swing of enjoying some baseball this weekend. But we want to make sure we get you caught up to speed on a couple of hot teams in the league that are really starting to make some noise in the American League postseason race. But before we do, we just want to remind each and every one of you where you can find us on social media, on Instagram at Bases Barrels Ball Players, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Bases Barrels 25. And be sure to check out our video content of some of the interviews that we were able to complete with some A's players, as well as some cool Blue Jays content that we were able to capture earlier this month up in Sacramento. Be sure to check us out at Bases Barrels Ball Players at the @ symbol, and it'll have the yellow symbol just like you see right behind my head. If you are watching this podcast edition, which you can watch all of our podcast show on that platform, as well as listen to the audio version on basically any of your favorite podcast platforms. And be sure to become an official subscriber on our Patreon site, patreon.com/Bases Barrels Ball Players. For just $2 a month, you'll be entered to win monthly Bases Barrels Ball Players t-shirts, MLB players autographed giveaways, and future MLB game ticket giveaways, and so much more as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. All right, now let's get to the first topic at hand and just do a quick recap of what went down earlier this week. So, like I mentioned at the top of the show, the Texas Rangers have been one of the hottest teams in baseball, especially on the American League side, and they continue their hot play out of the All-Star break. They go on earlier this week and sweep the A's in a 3-game set, improving now to 3 games over 500 with a record of 53-50. Don't look now, but they are only a mere game and a half out of that third final wildcard spot behind the Boston Red Sox. They are in the same slot currently as the Tampa Bay Rays on the outside looking in. But the Rangers, they've been getting some solid pitching. They have the best ERA in baseball, and it's been showing. And you saw it in this series where they got excellent performances. All 3 were quality starts. I don't know if Corbin's officially would count as one because he only went the 5 innings, but I think he did. He set the tone in terms of giving his team every opportunity to win the baseball game, which they did, that 2-1 advantage. But also Jack Leiter going 6+ and Jacob deGrom going 6 as well, striking out 9. That was just the pure example of the Rangers doing it in a very unorthodox franchise way, because the Rangers have always been known as a franchise that hammers home runs, well-renowned offenses, and playing wall ball. But this team's a little bit different. They're doing it on the mound. They're setting the tone with their pitching and defense. Whereas the hitting, it comes and goes, and they've been hitting better of late, I would say, over probably the last 4 to 5 weeks. But in terms of consistency and why this team is where it's at currently, on the outside looking in, but a lot closer than they were, say, pre-All-Star break. This team seems to have new life, new energy. They've won 8 of their last 10. And they've got a weekend of baseball to continue to try to climb closer and closer in that wild card race. So don't be surprised if the Rangers are in that discussion at year's end. And if you look up and see them in that wild card spot, you just know that championship DNA is in there with that core of Seager and Garcia and Simeon, but then also their World Series winning manager. So obviously there's a lot that goes into knowing how to play more effectively and play simpler and play winning baseball, especially in the back half of a season. It is a marathon, not a race, and I do think the Rangers are showing that they still have some great legs underneath them, and maybe their best baseball is still ahead. So just wanted to shout them out. They're definitely coming with some positive momentum as we dive deeper and deeper into the second half. It's not even August yet, so certainly plenty of time for the Rangers to leapfrog a couple of teams. Another team that is coming on hot, which this team seemed completely dead in the water. It seemed like they were going to be selling off all their assets at the trade deadline, which is rapidly approaching. The Cleveland Guardians. The Guardians, we're kind of struggling and slipping in that AL Central division. The Tigers have really had a stranglehold on that. And up until yesterday, they were the American League's best record. They were just surpassed by the Toronto Blue Jays heading into today's games. And it just kind of seemed like the division, obviously, it seemed like that discussion was over. But Cleveland, and I believe this was late June into early July, went into a 10-game losing streak. And it just seemed like no matter what they were doing, they were finding different ways to lose. And so they had some pieces, like their closer, Emmanuel Clase, that were up for discussion of potentially being sold at the trade deadline to do not a complete overhaul, but a soft rebuild to continue to replenish the farm system and retool potentially for a 2026 run. Just kind of felt like a lost season. But as of late, they've won 7 of 10. They had a good start to the week. They would take 3 out of 4 against the Orioles, take care of business. They lost a 4-run or a 1-run game in that 4th game. So they had an opportunity to complete the 4-game sweep, but took care of business there, won a series, and they find themselves now within 3 games of that final wildcard spot. So I do think there are some teams anteing up into that final wildcard spot and making that race a little bit more interesting. It just seemed like there were some teams that were really bottoming out and that there were going to be a lot more available pieces at the deadline. But, with how Cleveland's performed, you wonder if Clase is available anymore. I know he's been mentioned in rumors for teams that are looking to bolster the back end of their bullpen, but now they may have an opportunity to hold on to him if they feel very confident that they can work their way back into this race. And, I do think that is that added pressure that you see of players trying to perform, because anybody in any clubhouse never wants to be a part of a selling franchise. Everyone wants to be a part of a winning culture that is going to try to go and earn that postseason bid and try to go on that run to win the World Series. At least that's what the competitor in these players would want. And I'm sure it's a deflating feeling where you start seeing guys leave out the door and you're seeing prospects come back. Definitely a lot of turnover in culture, but that is the business side of it. And whatever happens in on-field performance really dictates that, especially around the trade deadline. So Cleveland, you got to put a big question mark on them. They went from a seller to who knows what they're going to do. I don't necessarily think they're going to buy. Historically, they've never been very active in terms of purchasing at the trade deadline, but you may see them just kind of stay put now. And I do think, with a week still to go until the trade deadline, really matters how they do this weekend. And I think, if Cleveland comes out and wins 2 out of 3, or whatever the case may be, another series, it's going to give baseball operations some things to think about. If it still makes sense to trade these pieces to get probably a pretty good, decent haul back, or do you stay in the fight and see if this team has what it takes in the legs to at least have a shot at earning that wild card spot? Because Cleveland has been one of those teams that has been regularly in the postseason the last 4 to 5 years, and certainly would be an interesting turn of events if they kind of drifted away from that momentum and kind of playing for next year. That doesn't seem to be their way, but I guess time will tell. And I think this is a big weekend to see if they really are in this postseason fight or not. So with that, we are going to keep on moving along here as some other occurrences throughout the week. Just wanted to really highlight those 2 teams. Shout out the Texas Rangers and Cleveland Guardians for playing some good baseball over the last couple of weeks or so. Brewers, they have MLB's best record at 61-41 by winning 2 out of 3 up in Seattle earlier this week. And they completed an impressive 5-1 West Coast trip, which included at the start of it sweeping the Los Angeles Dodgers in Dodger Stadium, a 5-1 West Coast trip. Very good. by the Brewers. They have MLB's best record. It's the first time that they have had the best record in the league this late into the season since their 1982 club. So it's certainly been some time. Also, just a little footnote, Justin Verlander, he finally earns his first win of the season as a San Francisco Giant. Hard to believe it took post All-Star break to earn that. Not necessarily been one of his finest seasons, but hopefully now he'll string off a few here in a row. Miami Marlins, they keep inching closer and closer into the wild card discussion. They take 2 out of 3 against the San Diego Padres and continue their climb to get into NL wildcard contention. Currently at 48-53, and brought it within 6 games back headed into Friday's play with another important series against the Red Hot Brewers, who we just mentioned this weekend. So that's a wrap of the highlights that caught my attention this week. Let's move ahead to a couple of the trade deadline moves that happened late last night, early this morning, and in the late morning, I believe, was the other one. So, first of all, Josh Naylor, he was traded from the Arizona Diamondbacks to the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners acquired Naylor from the D-backs in exchange for 2 of their top 30 organizational prospects. The D-backs will be receiving number 13 prospect left-handed pitcher Brandon Garcia and number 16 prospect right-handed pitcher Ashton Izzy. So Naylor, he's viewed as a rental in this situation. He is playing on the last year of his contract, but he's definitely having a fine season. He's hitting 292 on the year with 11 home runs, 59 RBIs, and an 807 OPS in 93 games. And I think this piece supplements that lineup, just that left-handed thump that they're missing. I think this is going to add extra protection for Cal Raleigh, who's having a fantastic and historic season in himself, but also Randy Arozarena and Julio Rodriguez. All of a sudden, this lineup that has been quietly more productive than history says for Mariners teams. And the pitching has been what needs to step it up a little bit in terms of consistency between guys not being available due to health and then ineffectiveness too as well. Not that it's been terrible, but just not the standard that the Mariners pitching staff has set over the last 3 to 4 seasons. So definitely look to see the Mariners have a big second half with their pitchers. I do think they are going to lock it in and lay a solid foundation as to why the Mariners may make a postseason push or not. But I do think this offense is going to continue humming, and Naylor is a good balance of contact and power too as well. Not going to give you much in terms of foot speed, and he'll play a good enough first base as well. But I do think this is someone that brings a good energy to the clubhouse, always wants to win, plays with that chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to bring an edge out of this Mariners club. I love this fit, and this is someone that's been on the Mariners' radar heading into the last, I'd say this year and last year in terms of him being in discussions at the trade deadline, free agency, and he was viewed as a target heading into 2026 season in terms of free agency once this season is over. So while he is going to technically be a rental since his contract will expire at the conclusion of the season, this is one possibility that this trade could lead to the Mariners keeping Naylor in-house and signing him to an extension or a new contract, depending on when they would want to get that done. But I think it would be dependent on how the experience goes. And I do think this is a good inside track for the Mariners to showcase to Naylor why they would be a good fit to have Naylor services for his free agent contract. And then on Naylor's side to see if it's a good fit for him in terms of the clubhouse, if he likes hitting there for half of his ball games. There's a lot that goes into that, and even day-to-day life and how he'll enjoy being a resident of Seattle. There's a lot that goes into making that decision, especially when you get to free agency. I would be surprised if a contract got done before that. Naylor, with the season that he's having, I feel like he would want to test the market and see what his value would be besides just from one team. But that's just my opinion. If he loves it so much, maybe they get something done, and I could be wrong. But that's just my hunch. All in all, though, I think this is the perfect fit. He'll slide in right in the middle of the order, probably in that 5 spot. And I think he's going to have a positive impact sooner rather than later. Naylor is expected to join the Mariners in Anaheim tonight, and I'm sure he'll get nice and acquainted with his new teammates. I'm probably doubtful that he'll be in the lineup tonight, but certainly would look to see him make his debut in either Saturday or Sunday's game. So nice pickup there for the Mariners. Hopefully that's not all they do at this deadline. I know they've been linked to bringing home Eugenio Suarez to also bolster their lineup. And if they do that, then now you got my attention, Seattle. If you pair those two trades at the deadline and really deepen that lineup, and supplemented with a pitching staff that's just due to bounce back in this second half, Mariners could be one of those dark horse teams that could sneak up on you. So good job so far. Hope, like I said, with the week left, hopefully they're just getting started. The other big trade that happened earlier today was Ryan McMahon is finally freed from Colorado. He has been traded to the New York Yankees. The Yankees had a glaring need at third base. Even headed into the 2025 season, there were some question marks at that position. So to kick off the year, they had Jazz Chisholm slotted in to play third base. But then also they had DJ LeMahieu as potentially playing over there, but then he eventually got mainly reps at second base. They've had Oswald Peraza. Earlier in the year, they had Oswaldo Cabrera at third base before he had a severe injury that ended his 2025 season. So third base has kind of been a revolving door. And with Jazz now primarily being back at second base, they now have found their primary third baseman in Ryan McMahon. They have confirmed that that will be his everyday role. So now the Yankees, I think they got a little bit better today. They definitely shore up their defense, which has been a glaring hole for them. And I do think having anchors on both sides of the field will create a better balance. So now you have McMahon, who has a strong arm over there, good range. I think it's going to take some of the pressure off of Volpe, who is leading all American League infielders in errors with 13. I do think that, there may be a little less pressure on Volpe to not have to extend out in terms of range and try to do a little bit too much more than he actually needs to. So I do think this is going to have a resounding effect in multiple areas. I do think this is a good fit, but something that should have been done a couple of years ago. I do know that the Rockies have been in a situation where they've been trying to start up a proper rebuild, and it just hasn't happened. So it does seem like they're finally at least moving in some sort of direction of some sort of a resemblance of a rebuild. This is viewed as a money dump, so because is still owed $12 million over the next couple of seasons. So this is good for the Yankees. They do have team control, and they're going to eat all of the remaining money on the contract. But this is good for the Rockies. They get a couple of pitching prospects out of it, which they need as much pitching help as they can get. And then they get a little bit more salary flexibility having McMahon's contract and money come off the books. McMahon, he's a 9-year veteran on the 2025 season. He's hitting .217 with 16 home runs, 43 runs batted in, and a .717 OPS. Like I mentioned, he is an absolute solid defender. He has a +4 in both defensive runs saved and outs above average so far on the 2025 campaign. Some of his downfalls and flaws in his game, he does have a lot of swing and miss in his at bats. He has a 31.7 K percentage and 35.1 whiff percentage. Those are some of the worst rankings in all of baseball. He, I believe, leads the league in strikeouts as well. So you are going to get a lot of strikeouts in that capacity. On the flip side, he has drawn a high volume of walks at a good rate, a 12.2 walk percentage, which is in the 86th percentile of all baseball, according to Baseball Savant, of all qualified hitters. His average exit velo is some more good. Averages 94 miles an hour on the year. That's in the 98th percentile in all baseball. So when he does get good contact, when he does make contact, he is squaring it off solidly. That's 98th is in the elite area of all hitters in terms of average exit velo. So if he gets it, it's going to go. I do think this is going to be a good pairing, and I do think he is in a situation where the Rockies aren't really going anywhere, right? They have MLB's worst record, and it didn't seem like they had any direction. And McMahon has always been there. Sometimes you just get lost and beaten down and downtrodden in that same situation day in and day out. It takes a toll on you, and eventually the best thing is sometimes a change in environment. And I know those numbers in terms of offensively don't really jump off the page at you, but I do think this is a significant improvement for the Yankees. Because like I mentioned a little bit earlier, their defense, they've really let down the pitching staff. So I do think has performed a lot better than numbers show. I do think they've just had added pitches, added stress that leads to more negative outcomes. I believe that this trade with McMahon, you're going to see a decrease in mistakes made in the infield. You're going to see a good flow. Now, it may take a little adjustment, obviously getting the communication down early on. Obviously, it may not fit like a glove right away. But I do think sooner rather than later, he's going to be an absolute positive anchor in that defense. You're going to see some highlight plays. He's got a rocket for an arm. And whatever you can get out of the third base position in terms of offensively is going to be an upgrade with McMahon. He has a 717 OPS on the year. And I believe Yankees third baseman on the year so far were like 627 OPS, which is absolutely abysmal. So they're going to get a boost here. And here's another thing, too. I think McMahon is going to see an absolute boost in production for two reasons. One, he is not going to be hitting in the 3 hole like he was in Colorado. He's probably going to be hitting 7 or 8. So he's going to get a lot better pitches to be able to take a crack at. And I think he's going to have a lot less pressure off of him and just let him do what he does. So don't be surprised if you see a big boost in his offensive performance, especially before teams adjust with him being in a new environment and just him being a product of potentially being a positive product of Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium does have a short porch in right field, and the majority of his home runs are pull side. I do think that could potentially be a match, and you could see an uptick in his power output. He does have 16 home runs on the year, and people will point to him getting to play at Coors Field, whereas predominantly the air is thinner in Denver, so the ball is going to travel a little bit further. But I do think playing at Yankee Stadium as a dead pull hitter kind of supplements that, and I do think you're going to see similar, if not better, production. He's got better protection in the lineup, and like I mentioned, he's going to be lower in the lineup. He's not going to be diced and getting like pitches going corner to corner as much as someone hitting in the 3 spot. And I don't mean him getting diced, though. I just mean that's the pitcher's trying to be a little bit more careful as compared to a 7 or 8 hitter. So I do think there's a lot of positives here for McMahon. I do think this is going to be a great fit. I think 2 excellent trades were made. I think the Seattle Mariners and Yankees both had excellent starts leading up to the trade deadline, but I hope both still have more to do. They both still have some holes to fill. I would say the Mariners can use another bat with a bullpen arm. Yankees, they can use more pitching help as well. So look to they may be in the market to look for a right-handed bat too as well, another infielder or potentially a utility guy. So we'll look and see as the trade deadline approaches and gets closer. Maybe we'll share some more rumors we're hearing, and obviously we'll share any breaking news about any signings and trades that happened leading up to that trade deadline. So Brian McMahon, he is headed to the Bronx, playing third base every day for the New York Yankees. And Josh Naylor will be playing first base and designated hitter pretty much every day for the Seattle Mariners. Both teams are looking for a boost in their chase for the postseason. And I think they both had great days. So let's see what else is in store. Hopefully this is the start of many moves to come. Obviously, well, it's entertaining when there is movement. I do understand wanting to have guys more stay with the team that they started with on the year. But in this day and age, I guess with more parity in the league, just good to see that there's teams that are going for it. And I do think with that extra wild card spot, it's just good that there's players that are getting opportunities to pursue that postseason berth if the team that they're on has no desire to do so. So that's why I'm a component of it. And we'll see what other trade deadline moves are made leading up to next week. And with that, we'll just give you a few things to watch here. We'll make a couple of predictions and then get on out of here. So just a few series to watch here. First, the LA Dodgers will be up in Boston at Fenway Park, taking on the Boston Red Sox. Both teams come in reeling. Something's got to give. Boston comes in losing 4 out of their last 6, while the Dodgers have done so as well, losing 4 of their last 6. And overall, they've lost 11 of their last 15. So one of these teams is going to be able to at least slightly right the ship. Ceddanne Rafaela of the Red Sox has 21 doubles, 2 triples, and 14 home runs on the year for the Red Sox, one of their leading offensive contributors. Trevor Story is 9 for his last 35 with 2 doubles over his last 10 games. Shohei Ohtani on the LA Dodgers side, he leads them with 37 home runs with a slugging percentage of .620. Andy Pages is 10 for his last 36 with 2 home runs and 5 RBIs over his past 10 games. Another interesting and fun series to watch. It actually started yesterday with the Blue Jays grabbing Game 1 in convincing fashion, 11-4. 3 more games between 2 of the American League's best teams. The Toronto Blue Jays are in Detroit taking on the Tigers. The Tigers are coming in losers of 4 in a row and 9 of their last 10. Blue Jays have been on the other trajectory, winning 7 of 10, and now own the American League's best record. Addison Barger of the Blue Jays is 12 for his last 36 with a double. triple, and 2 home runs over his last 10 games. Another interesting series. The Phillies are up in the Bronx taking on the Yankees, who just recently acquired Ryan McMahon. Cody Bellinger is 14 for 42 with 5 home runs and 10 RBIs over his last 10 games. And over on the other side, Kyle Schwarber leads the Phillies with 34 home runs while slugging .564. JT Realmuto is 16 for his last 42. He's really been heating up with 4 doubles, a home run, and 6 RBIs over the last 10 games. Both teams come in kind of being a little bit up and down as of late, as they both have accrued a 5-5 win-loss record over their last 10 games. And the last series that I have started for you to tune in, the Miami Marlins head up to Milwaukee to take on the Brewers. Brewers have won 9 of their last 10 and currently own MLB's best record at 61-41. Xavier Edwards of the Marlins is 12 for his last 40 with 4 doubles, a triple, and a home run over his past 10 games. And that's a wrap on some things to look out for as you enjoy the plethora of baseball to be played this weekend. And with that, that concludes another edition of Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. Today, we highlighted what happened and what went down over this past week. The Rangers and Cleveland Guardians are rolling. The trade deadline hot stove has started to rev up as Josh Naylor is headed to the Seattle Mariners. Ryan McMahon is heading to the New York Yankees. Then we gave you 4 series and some players to keep an eye at. Some guys that have been hot, some guys that have been slumping, some series that may capture your baseball entertainment senses. Stay tuned, or please go ahead and join us on Monday's show as we will recap what went down over the weekend. We'll do a more extended trip around the league. This is also Hall of Fame induction weekend, so we'll recap the legends that have been inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame up in Cooperstown. We'll have an official trade deadline show with talking some rumors and any trades that went down over the weekend or even leading up to Monday's recording show. And then we'll make some predictions as well and give you some things to watch out for as we kick off another new week of baseball. And we may indeed have a baseball content surprise for you. So you'll have to stay tuned for that and join us after the weekend of some more great baseball. That's a wrap on today's show. Thank you for ending your week and kicking off your weekend with Bases, Barrels, and Ball Players. Hope each and every one of you have a great day and a great weekend and enjoy all the great baseball to be played. Once again, I'm your host, Joe Grado. Have a great weekend. We'll see you back behind the mic for Monday's show. Play well.